Hey there, this is Katherine Bird. I'm here with Michelle Hawk. This is Shaman Sister Sessions, and this is episode 134. And this is the politics of spirituality. And uh yeah. Really,
Yeah.
that's where we're at. This is where we're at, is the politics of spirituality. Um, Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kat. I I kind of hate that we got to have this conversation, but also like we obviously do.
Yeah. So, is spirituality political?
Definitely. Let's just start right there. That's where we're coming from. So, the impetus behind recording this episode, aside from the current political shitstorm happening in the US, on the governmental level, is also the ripple effects that Kat and I have been seeing within our spiritual community, both of practitioners, friends, colleagues of ours, and then also people who may not be practitioners but who have a spiritual personal practice, and people saying all sorts of some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard, honestly, about ranging everywhere from, that you all know at this point that Kat and I are very liberal, very like take care of people, environmental rights, queer rights, trans rights, all the, rights for all the people, civil rights, and, socialized medical care, all of that. And so, we have all these people, like the spiritual to far right pipeline has just been flabbergasting me. And hearing also even like, all the far right stuff, but then even people who are like, oh, well, I can't talk about politics in my spiritual practice because, I'm politically neutral in my spiritual practice, or, oh, I don't talk about politics in my spiritual practice. And that is also flabbergasting. So that's why we're here having this conversation about the
Yeah.
politics of spirituality.
Yeah, I saw a medicine practitioner, an author, someone who just a month ago I saw promoting how that they were bringing indigenous people together and doing some kind of conference and raising money and all this stuff, say that they're politically agnostic, but they love, RFK and Maha because we're going to get rid of fluoride. But the disconnect on, we're going to get rid of fluoride, we may or may not, but at the same time we're getting rid of a ton of the EPA regulations on drinking water. So I am focused on fluoride, but I don't really like, who really cares about heavy metals and PFABs and uh, everything else that's in, chemicals that are in our water.
Mm-hmm.
And that corporations can just poison the water, and that's cool. And so there's such this disconnect of, this is what I want, and this is what is important to me, and this is what actually might be the best thing for humanity, which sometimes is a bit of a compromise, actually. And sometimes I don't always get what I want. And it is really easy for people to either drop out of the conversation or just choose to do what they feel is personally going to be best for them individually.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see how that, as someone who is saying, I'm a healer, I'm here to help people, I'm here to help with trauma, I'm here to help with collective intergenerational healing, that we can also be like, well, harming humans and children, that just is a byproduct. And so what? Who cares? As long as I get to do what I want in my super individual, super independent way. Because when we look at spirituality, when we look at healing, we have to be focused on the collective, even more than focused on ourselves usually, because that will actually take us further in our development when we're willing to be with the suffering of humanity and actually show up for the suffering of humanity. Not, I'm a practitioner because I don't want a real job and I'm going to make my money this way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like seriously, we have to be real about what is going on in the conscious, with very much fucking lots of air quotes, community, and the spiritual super double air quotes community, and how much that the early parts of the spiritual alternative spirituality is rooted in white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I
when you
think,
look at how
yeah.
early health food stuff, when you look at like, Kellogg's, right? And right, Kellogg's corn flakes were invented to keep people from masturbating. And that because they were supposed to be so bland that they would not create any heat or desire in your body, so you wouldn't want to touch yourself. Right. So there's these there's the reality that a lot of the early spirituality and the things that were happening in California and different places, where there were communities coming together to focus on health foods, and wellness, that they were also all white and all focused on this light and being light and of the light. And that light actually meant white. And so it was actually dropping out of the having to deal with the troubling aspects of society that have to do with injustice and race.
Mm-hmm. I didn't
It's
know that about Kellogg's. Yeah, but I mean, I had no idea. But we still like, okay, that was a lot. That
Right?
was a
That is a
big,
lot. Like
right.
I'm on a tear. There's a lot been going on this week. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, just for timing wise, we're recording this a little bit at, about a week after the inauguration Hellscape 2.0. And, just to make that very clear how we feel about that. So in this, I think I want to pull out a couple of pieces of what you're talking about, because I think, there's very, very important stuff in there. Let's just call it what it is, like the outrageous selfishness and narrow focus that people have on, out of all of these issues that affect all of these people, that affect the planet, that affect, like the US pulling out of the World Health Organizations, that affect like all the stuff beyond even just the US, but all global health and wellness and environmental health and wellness and non-human species health and wellness, right? The plants and animals, all of our Gaian relations. Out of all of those things, it is most important to me that I don't have to get vaccinated for a vaccine that you didn't even have to get in the first place, that I don't have to drink fluoride in my drinking water, that, whatever your, pick your favorite pet
right. Seed
project.
oils, red dye, and raw milk, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting that. You're getting that for yourself and your family. And a lot of those things, like if you don't eat seed oils, just don't eat them. Right? You don't eat
Right.
red
You don't
dye,
have to buy them.
won't
Yeah.
eat it. Right?
Right.
So you don't want to, like, there's all of these things where you want to drink raw milk, find a farmer. They exist. Go meet
Right.
one. Get a cow. Okay? That's how you can engage with that if that's your main focus, right? But what
Right.
you're saying,
But this,
it's like
like,
it is the collective, but I think that people have a really easy time translating, well, I'm doing this for the collective because I believe that these things are bad for the collective. And just like you're
right. And that's, it's so flabbergasting to me about like, well, how did someone even come to the place where like I know better than all of you and I get to make the decisions for everybody? I mean, that's the same philosophy behind people saying, okay, women are not made allowed to make own decisions about abortion, right? Because I know better, so I'm going to make this decision for everybody, regardless of, I have my own thoughts and feelings about it. And I'm going to allow that if I get to have my own thoughts and feelings and do what is, here's the other piece is like, some people just don't get the idea of medical sovereignty means, yes, you get to do what is right for you and make your own decisions about what's right for your body. And so does everybody else. And they might make different decisions than you do. Like that is inherently the definition of medical sovereignty, not, you or whatever governing body gets to decide the the policies that everybody has to abide by. It's so weird. It's like this double standard of like, okay, because I'm so hyper focused on these, pet issues, it's okay with me that everything else is sort of secondary. It's okay that polio, which has been pretty much eradicated, might make a resurgence if people aren't getting
Right.
vaccinated against
There's
polio
a
and
there's
smallpox,
a resurgence
right?
of TB happening right now in Kansas, by the way,
Right. Yeah.
which
So it
people
and
get from milk and from each other, and um,
yeah.
but the
And it's
thing is,
okay if we're going to get rid of all the protections on land, as long as the US has energetic sovereignty and we, drill baby drill, as long as we get to like provide our own energy, it's okay that there's going to be all these oil spills. And it's like, where are your priorities on like the again, it's that outrageous selfishness. It's the most shadow manifestation of this hyper individualization, me, my, upon which the United States was founded, right? We were founded upon, rebels basically like, I want to, believe what I believe and, religious freedom and do what I want, right? And so I'm going to go somewhere else and do what I want and write it into the Constitution of like freedom of speech, freedom of, beliefs and all of this. And it's this weird, like ultra focused distortion of that, of this, like, again, this really like the most unhealthy possible manifestation of that hyper individualization. It's very strange. It's very,
well,
very
I
strange.
think that we get flummoxed by it, right? Because we're not in it in the way, right? But there has been an enormous amount of intentional misinformation and uh, stuff out there that people believe so strongly, and they have been so in the soup of it and in the community of it that they actually don't believe what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
The conversations that I've had, they do not actually believe that the impact will be negative if they choose this. They do not believe it. And when you believe in something in that way, like there's really nothing that can be done. And it's the same as when you're in a cult, when you're in a spiritual cult and all your
Mm-hmm.
friends are there and you're all chanting and singing and dancing and it feels really good, but you also have to, do certain things to continue to be part of your little group. People stay in
Yeah.
that for a really long time. And so it can be hard because people are really convinced of stuff, and it all is feeding in on itself, so that they're like, well, um right, World Health Organization is a good example you brought up. That's
Mm-hmm.
bad because it's going to make us do vaccines, and vaccines are bad. And honestly, I used to be really anti-vax until I saw people go so crazy over COVID, and I was like, y'all are selfish assholes, actually. So but I used to be really anti-vax and be like, yeah, I think we're over vaccinating. I still think we're over vaccinating, like having tiny little babies get so many things like at
Mm-hmm.
once, but it could be done more intelligently, spread out, less like looking at what all is in everything. Like we could be doing better, we could be having more regulations, we could be making things safer. But they're like, well, it's bad, so we should go with the like not doing it at all. Instead of trying to make things safer and more regulated, we should not have any regulations, we should just like not do it. But looking at
Mm-hmm.
the World Health Organization, people have been told so many times this is bad because they want to force you to do this to you. But they're not thinking, oh, the World Health Organization also gives anti-HIV medications to and antiviral medications all over the world, and has saved hundreds of thousands of people's lives, millions of people's lives, probably based on real serious infectious diseases in very, very poor areas of the world, that we as part of that organization help support people who are in extreme medical need, who are living in like legitimate medical deserts, helping women birth babies, helping people with diseases that are easily helped with things like antibiotics. And being part of that organization means that our contribution helps people with stuff that water safety, with things that access to medications so that they don't go gangrene. Like there's simple stuff that being part of that organization helps. And we're like, well, let's just throw it out with the bathwater because we don't want to have conversations about we could regulate and do things in a better way.
Right. Well, there's even beyond, everything you're mentioning, Kat, and the U.S. pays, pays dues to be part of the World Health Organization, as do all the members. And I think I saw I don't remember exactly the amount that the U.S. pays to the WHO, but, people saying, oh, well, why should we American taxpayers be paying to take care of people all over the world? Well, it's also, and everything you're saying, Kat, totally valid and totally awesome and very important. And even from the most selfish perspective, the WHO stops a lot of these infectious diseases in the world from coming to the US. So by helping to take care of people, like people travel, people go places, and, by helping our global community be healthier, it helps all of us be healthier. By helping, citizens of the world, and, people are traveling everywhere and carrying, that's how COVID got to the States, unless you feel like it was intentionally released or whatever your favorite conspiracy is, because people are traveling. And so having regulations and policies in place and having care throughout the world, we don't live in a bubble. People are going places all the time. And so it does support our individual health. Your kid going to school, or you going to church, someone just got back from vacation in an area that has malaria. Okay, well, they can bring that back with them unless there are regulations in place, vaccine guidelines in place, medications in place to make sure that they're not bringing whatever back with them from their safari or their whatever vacation they were just on. So it goes beyond, like, of course, yes, taking care of people who really need help. And again, even from the most selfish perspective, having the WHO is a good thing for us. So
right.
it's,
and when you're not, here's the thing, when you're not participating in something, you're not part of the conversation.
Yep.
Right. When you just are like, well, no more of this, then you're not able to influence and say, hey, like maybe we could do things in a better way, because obviously we're not doing everything in the best way. Obviously, like Democrats do not have their shit together and are not always advocating for the best thing. And most of that has to do with money. At the base and root of everything, of a lot of our problems in this country and around the world, has to do with money and the hoarding of wealth. And that our politicians are all wealth seeking. Like 90% of them are in it wealth seeking and as part of their gig. So, that is actually a much more important conversation than some of this other stuff that we're trying to do, because no matter what you do, if underneath everything, the people making the decisions are making those decisions because it is enriching them and their friends, then they're always going to make decisions for enrichment of themselves and their friends instead of the collective greater good. And then they can just spin it to make it look like, you're getting what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's it's important to remember, this is something I always like to think about, of like the people in power, meaning like our civil servants and public servants, government officials, are actually employees of the taxpayers. And it's not that like we are all so I don't know. Something about that mentally just helps me remember like, oh yeah, no, I don't like what they're doing. And so the way that I can exert my opinion and my force and my power as their employer, as the people, as a person who is paying their wages, is to vote, is to get involved in the conversations, is to elect somebody else, is to inform myself as to what they're doing. Just like if you were the boss of whatever company or whatever practice, like you need to keep tabs on what your employees are doing. And if they're not doing what you want, have a conversation with them, train them differently, or hire somebody else. And I think that that is a shift that I'm inviting other people to also think about as well, of like, public service. That is the industry that we're in. The industry of government is like public service. So
Well,
serve the public.
I think that that is like the underlying piece of what we have, but like with Citizens United and all of this stuff with um like the Congress people can just invest in the fucking stock market willy-nilly, whatever they're getting, they know, and they're making millions of dollars. That means that they're actually working for corporations.
Yeah.
We have we have some impact in being able to vote for them and all of these things. But at the end of the day, if their number one priority is corporate rule and stock market, dividends,
Right.
then that's a real issue. And that's going to affect all of us. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was saying this from the most like, the core
well, because a lot of people don't
intention
even
of how that was.
participate, right? Like this
Right.
person who's like, I'm politically agnostic. I'm like, are
Yeah.
you really though? Who did you vote for? Did you vote? Did you just not vote?
Yeah.
And if we look at only 30% of our population votes, so then we
Yeah.
go, oh, well, half the people really love Trump, right? And it's like, no, half the people of 30%, which is really
Yeah.
only, not a great huge percentage of people, just made all these choices for us.
Right. For everybody who didn't vote. Yeah. And for people who did, so I think there's this, um, what you're bringing up, Kat, is really important about looking at how are people engaging with the system, meaning people, meaning those who are in positions of governmental power, and like where are their loyalties. Most of them do not have loyalties actually to the people who they are technically supposed to serve. So with this, I think I want to bring this back to like less political commentary and more commentary on like this is really about the spirituality of politics, and like how do we as citizens, like, I don't know, do we have any politicians who listen to our podcast? Probably not. But if we do, in case we do, send us a message. I'd be curious to hear from you. Um,
Politicians in training, maybe, like,
yeah, exactly. Right. Those who are, stepping up to be part of your city governments and part of your, like go be on the water board somewhere, go be on city council, go run for state senate, right? Great, cool, awesome. And but for all of us who are here, who may not actually be involved directly in working with politics, but looking at like where, to circle back to the very beginning of the episode, Kat, what you were talking about of like the collective aspect here, and looking at, this is what we talk about in a lot of our podcast episodes about, yes, it's our own personal healing, and also we're tuning into collective frequencies. Yes, it's our own lineage, ancestral wounding, and also we are inherently inexorably connected with all of our relations, our human and our Gaian relations. And it is impossible to fully heal and liberate ourselves individually without fully healing and liberating ourselves collectively. So as long as we collectively are making choices to perpetuate systems of oppression, to perpetuate global environmental disaster and catastrophe, to perpetuate suffering and enslavement of various populations within various industries, and I'll say also like biological enslavement of like trapping people within medical systems where they can't be healthy and can't take care of themselves, right? And as long as we're choosing that, because we want raw milk or whatever the thing is, like we are choosing our own suffering. As long as we are making it impossible for other beings to be well and thriving and healthy and happy, we are choosing that for ourselves too.
Yeah.
So it's this, like, I think people forget that in whatever. And again, it's flabbergasting of like some of the, oh man, I'm signed out of all my Meta accounts right now on all my devices. I'm just like, I just don't want to engage with it. I don't want to be logged into Meta. But I was seeing, um, fellow like qigong practitioners and like very spiritual sound healer channel medium whatever, who are all rah like MAGA whatever. And it's like, in theory, shouldn't your practice be helping you attune to these sensitivities of health and well-being? Like, shouldn't your qigong practice, for example, because like one of the people I saw is like, a qigong relation of mine who I used to practice with, and it's like, shouldn't that be helping you tune into what feels like really radiant health and aliveness and right relation in your body? And if you're like hoodwinked by the MAGA stuff, like, is your practice actually helping you? Right? Because in theory, like, this is a genuine question. In theory, if our spiritual practices should be helping us cultivate discernment, empathy, right relation, well being, shouldn't that help us to discern in the world, this person's full of shit, this politician is lying their ass off? Shouldn't that
Yeah,
help?
it should, but I don't, RFK emotionally abused his wife until she hung herself, the mother of his children. I'm sorry. I don't think that stands for health and wellness. Instead of just divorcing her, that is not health and wellness. Sorry. And if you think that is health and wellness, if you think someone who could do something like that would lead you toward health and wellness, then what is the health and wellness that you're headed toward? Like, what really is that's an example of a teacher? So, but we see all the time people in health and wellness communities following teachers who are abusive, narcissistic, and harmful to their followers. We see it all the time, all the time. Yogis, people who are focused on health and wellness, vegetarianism, doing practice, meditating, eating right, and they find out that their teacher is a rapist. And they go, either I don't believe that's true, or nobody's perfect. Right? So we see it all the time. So we know, like, it's an example to everywhere. And so it's obviously really easy for us to do that. It's obviously really easy for us to do. Or else these communities wouldn't continue on. People wouldn't make excuses for their spiritual leaders and their teachers, which I've seen over and over and over again. People would go, oh, that's what that teacher did? I'm out. But they don't. And sometimes they even pretend to be out on the outside, but then in their little cupboard, in their little room, they still have their little altar and their little shrine up to their teacher, even though they know that they're a horrible person because they had spiritual truths. And that is one of the pieces that we have to be so conscious and aware of. What you said about discernment is that spiritual truths, health and wellness truths, wisdom is often used as a manipulation tactic to control you and to get you to do what someone wants. Because if you say something that's really spiritually true and spiritually wise, and you have a great practice and you do a healing meditation and you feel amazing and you have spiritual power flowing through you, you are actually sometimes more easy to manipulate than less.
Bummer.
And if your spiritual practice does not increase your empathy and your ability to feel the suffering of others, then there's something wrong with your spiritual practice.
Okay, genuine question, because this I think is a really important point. And you and I have talked about this. Let me like word vomit this a little bit. Okay, y'all who are listening, like buckle in. Okay, we've talked about this previously about like dispelling the illusions of spiritual practice where people think, okay, is spiritual practice going to make my life easier, make me a bunch of money, bring me the best love and sex and belonging and fame, whatever. And we have said on this podcast, no, probably not. And it's like this idea I'm wondering is like I'm also asking because I'm really trying to understand. Like there are people who I like as people who I think are good people who are spouting the MAGA stuff that I'm like, I honestly do not understand how you got there with all that I, knowing you for as long as I have. I'm thinking of a handful of people in particular, knowing you as long as I have, having done practices with you, gone like to meals at your house and like had conversations about like our art and purpose and done meditations together, and this is what you're buying into, like really don't get it. And I'm wondering, is that illusion part of the thing where it's like, oh, what you said, Kat, really about like, okay, if you can be tuned into this really beautiful spiritual vibration, and it's like, well, if this feels this good, then it can excuse, someone quote making some mistakes or behaving poorly or whatever, because I didn't get hurt. I had this really amazing experience. So as long as I had this amazing experience, it's validating whatever internal expectation I have of my spiritual practice being a self-serving thing that is going to give me fame, money, power, love, whatever. So I'm going to continue delving into that rather than looking at spirituality as the model of what you said about like helping us cultivate our empathy, which is inherently really fucking uncomfortable because being empathic
It
to
hurts.
other, it hurts.
It
Being
hurts. It actually
empathic
hurts.
to other people's sufferings
I think
is sucky
I think
sometimes.
this is one of the like maybe anchoring pieces is
Yeah.
that we pursue spiritual, energetic, whatever practice to relieve our pain and suffering when actually that isn't the point. And so when we do it toward that end, we will follow any path that leads us to personal experience of less pain and suffering for our individual self at any moment. Because we have infused a powerful spiritual, energetic practice with our intention. I am committed to experiencing less pain and suffering inside of my system at whatever cost.
And yet, like, isn't like I totally get it. Like I'm legitimately like grappling with this, right? Of like, I also really firmly believe in practical spirituality. Like the purpose of engaging with spiritual practice is to support us in our lives. And again, that might not always be convenient or comfortable, but to support us in having really important, deep conversations with the people we love, sometimes difficult conversations, to support us in our compassion and our generosity and our empathy with our relations, to help us find meaning and connection in, even in times when we might feel really alone, to drop into that inner connection with self and with spirit, to make choices in our purpose, our vocations, our jobs, whatever, to be a beneficial presence in the world. And no, that is not always going to be convenient or comfortable, but helping us to, cultivate fortitude, firmeza, like that conviction, the strength, and responsibility. So when we describe spirituality that way, like, it really doesn't sound that fun, honestly. It sounds
No,
it sounds
it's not.
no.
Like,
And
I think we need to reorganize ourselves about this. If you look at, Bodhisattva vow, right? If you look
Mhm.
at, some of these aspiration vows and from Tibetan Buddhism, if you look at some of these ancient teachings that were all about, I am willing to be completely present with the suffering of humanity and do
Yeah.
everything within myself to relieve that suffering,
Yeah.
both within myself, but also in service to the greater and to others and to the teachings of Jesus,
Mhm.
to the least among us, to the foreign, to the alien, uh, to the sex worker, to the homeless,
Enslaved
to the
person. Yeah.
leper, to the
Yeah.
most sick, to the most uh, wounded, to the most dirty and deranged of us is us. And I am committed to relieving that suffering. Um, and it's like when I think of St. Francis and going to Italy and visiting Assisi was really impactful for me, and reading some books about St. Francis. And I'm in Santa Fe, and St. Francis is the patron saint of Santa Fe, and I have the St. Francis out in my yard. And like, to see that St. Francis, his initial huge awakening was on meeting a leper and actually like loving that leper so much that it created this huge spiritual awakening and light in his life that completely transformed everything. And he actually went fucking crazy. He went nuts on spirit. And then he was so passionate, and all these people followed him, and then on and on and on. And he was sleeping in a little cave on a little stone, tablet. And then you see what happens after he passes, and it turns into this huge, elaborate basilica of just the most ornate, and his bones in the basement, and you can walk past them. It's a big deal, but it's like the most ostentatious thing that you ever could imagine. And you see his initial original teaching, which was simply live in the most humble way possible, give to the animals and the earth, give to the most wretched among us. And somehow people lifted him up to a place where they flipped the teachings on their head and were like, oh, well, really, it's about this, huge building and the stuff we're selling in the gift shop, and the
Yeah.
like the riches of it, the money of it. And it really goes to show how easy it is
Yeah.
for us to listen somehow and hear the spiritual teachings and then completely turn them on their opposite and
Yeah.
follow that and think and convince ourselves that we're following the right way. In the same way, maybe you saw this recently. There was some pastor or something, who, in response to the bishop who called out Trump at the inaugural, the church ceremony, and basically just said, please have empathy, have compassion for those that are scared and hurting. And there was somebody who came out and said, do not fall for the sin of empathy, the snake of empathy. That is the snake among you, is empathy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, it is like, yeah,
Right.
really? Yeah, that's true. So, um,
Well, but I mean, it's interesting to consider where that might be coming from. Well, yeah, to somebody who, let's look at what becomes impossible when we are anchored in empathy. If when we are anchored in empathy, it becomes impossible for us to actually like agree to inflict pain and suffering because we are connected to that feeling. Because when I'm in my empathy, I feel your suffering and it hurts me, so I don't want to be inflicting further suffering. When we're actually in our empathy, we do not agree to perpetuating harm. We do not agree to like making people hurt more. And so, yeah, to somebody who's really invested in like, okay, well, I'm going to continue the profitability and do whatever I want. Yeah. Then empathy becomes this thing to discourage people from. And it's this, I feel like there's this phenomenon of selective empathy
oh
that
yeah.
we're seeing. Yeah. It's like, oh, I can be empathic to the people who also want raw milk and like the people who are suffering from like having to get the vaccine that they didn't want to, even though nobody actually made them do it. Um, so like I can be really empathic to that, but then being empathetic to, to this other kind of suffering. Oh no, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Well,
So it's very,
uh,
yeah,
something that just it's like true empathy does not support hierarchical structures.
yeah. That's that's another piece is like, when and looking at this through the shamanic lens, and something I talk about in my shamanic practice is like we live in a world predicated on human supremacy. Like the societal structures that we have built presume that humans are at the top of the chain, and I gotta tell you, there is nothing in the animistic perspective or the shamanic perspective that supports that. There is nothing at all.
Well,
And
and
in fact it
yeah, we become so hierarchically obsessed, really,
yeah.
that like in order for me to feel valuable and worthy, I need to have something, someone underneath me that
Mm-hmm.
I'm in charge of, that I'm better than, that I'm smarter than, that I'm whatever, right? This idea that there's this God hierarchical system down thing, and that if I can be somewhere in that hierarchy where there's stuff below me, then I'm closer to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As
And
opposed to the oh, go ahead.
right,
Go ahead.
it's just I don't know, like I think that this is a big piece of it. I think that this is a big piece of it.
Yeah. And there is, yeah, it's again the animistic perspective, which is the orientation I'm coming from, and the shamanic perspective looks to like obviously not a monotheistic or any kind of hierarchical divinatory like cascade, but instead at like the pantheistic nature of the divinity of life itself as the sacred. And being able to, then our power comes not from, oh, I have these other beings under me, but our power comes from belonging to the wholeness of creation. Our power comes from I am part of life. I belong to life. And life loves me, and life loves all of life. And it is through my participation and my radical aliveness and my reciprocal generosity with life that I have power, because that is power, is co-creation, is collaboration. And me being powerful doesn't mean that anyone or anything is less powerful. It is shared because it is collective aliveness. And I think that's where, and again, that's inherently a very like decentering the self, and also, Kat, you mentioned the bodhisattva vows, you mentioned the whole like the awakening of Saint Francis. It's very much about decentering the self and taking ourselves as individuals completely out of the equation. Like, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this for any kind of self-aggrandizement or benefit or validation. I'm doing this to serve. I'm doing this from love. I'm doing this because I believe in life and I want to serve life. I want to collaborate with life itself and allow life to move through me, life begetting life, and me as a conduit for that. And I think, what you mentioned about the distortion of that, like, people feel that when we come into contact with that, it's so magnetic. And people are so drawn to the saints, so drawn to those who have this experience of completely decentering themselves, because what happens is they take themselves out of the way and they allow life, the divinity of life, to fill them completely. And it is so magnetic and attractive, and it draws people, and people want to experience that. And so then they're like, oh, can I be in your presence? Can I, be around you? And then that's where the construct of the fame and the reputation and, even the money or whatever comes into play. And so I think it's like looking at, where does the illusion of that even come from, or where do people get distorted in? They see the reputation and the fame that came as a result of
Mm.
getting the self enough out of the way in order to create that feeling that people are really drawn to. But it's like, oh, I just want the fame part, the fame and the money and the reputation,
Right.
not the
Let me
radical loss of
let
self
me act
required for that to happen.
and let me just act out and reproduce the thing that I saw, right? Which actually we're
Yeah.
pretty good actors and we can actually reproduce that, right? So, it's I think we've said on here a lot of times, I know I say it all the time, like, being able to achieve something magical, whatever that is, power, moving something across the table, reading somebody's mind, talking to somebody's dead grandma, whatever. It doesn't matter. Being able to achieve something magical does not mean anything about your internal humanity. Does not mean that you are a good person, does not mean that you are a just, ethical person, practitioner, whatever. And that is so important for everybody to understand, because we can get so lost in the illusion of other people's beauty, power, influence, money, community, abilities, gifts that they have. And it is really easy to look at someone else or experience someone else and give them credit for being more humane and ethical, and aligned to a strong moral compass, than we think. Like, we're very highly influenced by what we experience outwardly from others. And so that's always something that, when you're looking at spiritual teachers, when you're looking at communities, when you're looking at practitioners of any kind, to be aware that one does not equal the other, and that it is important to dig deeper on the people that you're that you're following, and that someone can have such amazing, true wisdom teachings and actually not be a good person.
Well said. I'm here. My camera just went out and I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm here.
Okay, good. I was like, I don't know if you're going to talk. I better keep talking. It's okay.
No, you're doing so great. I have no idea what happened with my camera. It might just be gone, but that's okay. I can just
Okay, well,
yeah.
we can wrap this up. We've ranted. I've probably said enough like danger words on here that this won't even get seen. But you
I
know,
want to also, just in case there's anyone coming at us with legal stuff, we're gonna just say the word
allegedly.
allegedly to
This is very
everything.
alleged.
This is
This
all very
is
alleged, theoretical,
Yeah.
like,
This isn't really
it's
happening, and this isn't really true. It's all just a
right.
made up game that we've come up with to
These
entertain
are
ourselves.
Right. These are dreams that we had, like,
No,
this.
I wanna
Right.
speak to this because this is interesting. I was listening to this person who said that they went on the dark web and because they wanted to see like what's going on in the dark web. And there happens to be on the dark web like threads and things of how that misinformation and influence is put out onto social media. And they were talking about how that they were recruiting basically like spiritual people and tarot readers and stuff like that to be on social media telling us that we've switched timelines and to like make it super confusing where there's things like, well, Trump isn't really the president. That's not what's really happening. We're on a different timeline, or that we're splitting timelines in such a way so that you're on your own timeline. What you think is happening and what you're being told about people experiencing suffering isn't really actually real. That's not really happening. You're living on a higher timeline where this isn't happening and you've actually transcended into a different timeline. So please be conscious and aware that there are a lot of shystery people who are actually getting paid to influence you.
That's super weird. Yeah.
Right? Totally crazy.
Right.
So, like, there's a lot of weird timeline stuff going on out there. I see people talking about timelines all the time. I see people channeling stuff that's total nonsense, and is just connected to their own, either their own like wishful thinking or their own fear and projection. Be conscious and aware of what you're consuming and where you might be being influenced and led down a certain path. Don't just hang out with the same people all the time.
Right. Yeah, I think that, I mean, just not taking anything for granted about, and this is partly also like I want to be, take a moment to be humble here myself and look at, this is part of why I'm asking these questions and really trying to understand these people that I like, who I think genuinely are good people, that they're having these beliefs that are so different from mine. So really, really trying to anchor into like, I don't take for granted that I know everything. I don't take for granted that I have the right answers, but like, what are my values? How am I living into those values, like through my behavior every day? What are the most aligned philosophies and practices in the world that support those values? So, being an inquiry about that
Yeah.
is always a good
And that
practice.
you can feel like you're living your values and you can still be having a very strong negative impact on other humans.
That's true also. Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
know, so
Good.
it's like it's delicate. There's balance here, right?
Yeah.
Um so there can be the awareness and understanding that a lot of cancer treatment is actually harmful for some people, right? And might contribute actually to the death of someone faster than the actual cancer that they have. That can be true.
Right.
And it's also true that cutting off all cancer funding has just resulted in the death of a child who was receiving
Mm.
cancer treatment that was working. And now Trump has turned off the funding. They stopped getting the cancer treatment and they immediately died. So
Yeah.
both of those things can be true. And that's a very delicate internal conversation to be having. Like, yes, we should be evolving past some of the medical treatments that aren't actually healthy for us. And also, if no one can receive medical care, that's also very unhealthy. So,
Yeah.
you know, medications are not good for everyone. Vaccines are not good for everyone. And also, they are good for a lot of people. So, how do we step back and inquire, how do we move forward as a collective in a healthy way, supporting each other and supporting people that are not like us and don't have the privileges that we have? I think is always a really important question to be asking.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot there. I feel like we could record lots more offshoots of
Maybe
this.
we should just start a political
Politico
podcast,
spiritual.
kicked out of the country.
I don't know, maybe like
I don't want to get kicked
Panama,
out of the
like
country because I just have
expats.
too many rocks.
You what?
I have too many
You have too
rocks,
many rocks?
right?
Yeah.
Like I have too many rocks to try to relocate a very long, far distance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, I was thinking about that and I was like, man, yeah, on some days I'm definitely like, sure, I'd love to go like fuck off and live in Portugal. And then other days I'm like, all right, if I'm really actually here to live into my purpose, and part of my purpose and my particular brand of medicine and magic is about supporting people through an underworld initiation and supporting people through an alchemical death and rebirth process, then I'm in the perfect place, honestly, to
Yeah.
be here and to live into that. So
Yeah.
I'm right where I need to be. And yeah, it's kind of sucky and uncomfortable sometimes for me personally, but again, back to those whole values of service, like it's not about me. It's not about any of us individually. It's about life and allowing life and the divinity of life to move through us.
Well said. All right.
Thanks. Okay, that seems like a good place to stop. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Sorry, my camera pieced out. I mean, if you're listening on audio, it didn't really make a difference for you. But anyway, I am here. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Kat. That was a very enlivening conversation and I think
Yeah.
very important conversation for us to be having.
We're on this.
Just because we do need to pay the bills and do need to like invite people to come pay us money. In case you want to come pay me money, man, my camera, what is going on? I didn't. Okay,
It was
I'm not
me. I
actually.
was trying to turn it on for you to see if it would work.
No, I've been trying. It's,
Right.
yeah, sorry. I was like, oh no, my computer's possessed. If you do want to come pay me money and study with me, I have ways for you to do that. You can come learn alchemy in that alchemical death and rebirth thing I mentioned. I have a 200-hour alchemy certification training program that begins in March. So you can find me through my website, michellehawk.com, or if you are interested in cultivating your shamanic practice, then that is also something I support people in their shamanic healing and training. So come study shamanic wisdom with me.
Great.
Yeah.
Uh, if you want to get to know me, reach out and let's chat. I have so many things to offer and so many things to sell if you want to buy something, and all in the realms of healing and energetic spiritual development and running your healing practice and business and so much more. And check out my book, The Healer's Process.
Hmm. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks for bearing with us. And please comment, like, subscribe, share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. Share it with all your MAGA friends, and
So we
yeah,
can get
get us
lit.
get us
We're
banned
looking
from
for some
YouTube.
hate comments. We're looking for
Right.
some hate. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Be well.
Bye, Michelle.